Hello, Africa. This is Business Africa, and I am Ignatius Ano. Our top stories. Uptick in liquidity in an election year while traders decry low sales. What's the cost on the economy post Ghana's 2020 elections? A massive boost in revenue for operators of point-of-sale devices in Nigeria. But we hear why some stakeholders are unhappy. And a little later, Uganda inches closer to begin oil pipeline construction as it validates an environmental impact assessment. Details right now. The stakes were high for politicians during election 2020 in Ghana, but a completely different scenario for traders and businesses in the capital, Accra. Despite what economists see as increase in liquidity over election spending, the impact of the pandemic meant low sales. Our Ghanaian correspondent Peter Kwao Adota reports that the finance minister remains optimistic.
We are in the business district of Accra to gauge the mood, taking into consideration the impact of COVID-19 on the economy.
The party mode is missing this year due to COVID-19. This has affected our sales because the parties are not organizing rallies.
The impact of COVID-19 on our business is deadly. Even those who come out occasionally fear to get closer to us, let alone the shop.
The concerns of traders in Accra are in sharp contrast to views shared by some economists over liquidity during election year.
Two things have combined. Now, we all know COVID might be the significant reason why government is overspending. But we shouldn't forget that we are also in an election year. And definitely, government would also want to spend to please the people.
Government, as a way to carry political favor, decides to pay all funds that have been locked up in institutions as a result of the financial sector cleanup. So there was a sudden increase in liquidity. The difficulty is that it's a one-off, and after the bill will come due, and there we'll expect interest rates to rise a bit more because the government is expected to do a bit more borrowing, even on the local market, and then we'll see how things go.
But Ghana's Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta remains upbeat.
I think really hard work, ingenuity, and belief in God, we should be able to do it. So yes, it's going to be challenging. There is COVID, but even in COVID, this has been some of the most remarkable times for the country in terms of our spirit and our resilience and our sense of purposefulness. So, the locusts will come, but God will restore us.
According to the World Bank, staying on a sustainable path through the 2020 election period will be a challenge over the next 2 years for the country.
Franklin Kujo is founding president of Imani Center for Policy and Education in Ghana. He joins us from Accra. Franklin, thank you for speaking to us. So first of all, how do you explain a decline in purchasing power in an election year when government spends more?
I guess the challenges really have to do with what the government is spending on. Don't forget that the impact of the coronavirus means consumption has been impacted negatively. But the government seems to be investing in other areas of resuscitating the economy. So, for instance, they've extended freebies in terms of utilities support, the subsidized utilities, electricity and water. As I understand, there are still some significant spending being done in order to provide some meals of some food material to persons who have been impacted. So clearly speaking, government expenditure should obviously have been impacted by some of the consumption patterns that were not necessarily envisaged up until now.
Now, concerns have been raised, especially regarding the financial cleanup exercise that the government embarked upon. What's the cost of this on the local economy post-election 2020?
That's a beautiful question. The fact of the matter is that the cleanup was supposed to have injected funds into the system because the government believes and keeps telling us that they spent close to 22 billion Ghana cedis which is almost about $4 billion to resuscitate the banking sector. Unfortunately, not many have seen that impacted properly because some of these funds were initially supposed to be held in bonds, but because of the pressures of elections, they have now been redeemed. Question is, as they were redeemed, did it mean that those who received the monies, and indeed some people have received their monies, their deposits, are they spending those deposits immediately? The answer is no. So the banking sector cleanup cannot be a panacea to significant spending.
Finally, the World Bank in particular has been deeply concerned about Ghana maintaining the sustainability, particularly in an election year. Is this concerning, and how does the government ensure this happens?
I'm afraid that the debt iceberg, as I call it, will continue to grow. Don't forget that the debt situation meant that the fiscal outing looks rather, unhinged. So what it means is that there's about 8% growth in the fiscal deficit that cannot be explained away by just COVID. It has to be explained away by government unnecessary spending, unnecessary spending, which means that they are attracting debt as well as a result of that. So clearly speaking, the debt situation is going to grow. I'm sure the government had its way. It will still borrow more. Already it's borrowing a lot. It's borrowed close to 150 billion Ghana cedis in 3 years. That's a lot of money. And the only reason why we can sustain our debt is when we start doing things sensibly. So it deals on us to rein in expenditure. As I said, 8% out of the nearly 15-16% fiscal deficit is caused by unnecessary expenditure. And that cannot be salvaged by any debt sustainability plan, because there's just no debt sustainability plan.
All right, Franklin, we thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Franklin Kujo is founding president of Imani Center for Policy on Education, speaking to us from Accra, Ghana. A big boost in revenue for operators of point-of-sale devices in Africa's most populous nation. The enterprise has become a legitimate money-making business in Nigeria. Point-of-sale outlets are more profitable in communities with no banks. POS serves the financial needs of communities where automated teller machines are just not enough. But our correspondent Michael Debe reports that some have capitalized on the pandemic to inflate charges.
The global pandemic continues to bite many businesses. But in Nigeria, operators of mobile point-of-sales devices are cashing in as banks enforce restrictive measures to curb the spread of coronavirus.
It's a reliable one. If you come in to take money, you take your money fast and you leave. Unlike the bank, so you have to queue up to get your turn because of this coronavirus thing. And even before the coronavirus thing, it's very difficult to get your money from the bank.
The POS business is growing at a faster rate in most cities in Nigeria, providing job opportunities for numerous Nigerian youths. However, some say the challenges are enormous.
Little money here and there could help them. So that is the intention of those who set it up. But there's some little fraud involved in this.
But he says the system can be sustained with proper enforcement of regulations by the central bank.
We have different types of POS. So some have some limitations. There's some cards, some do accept, some don't. And then the charges.
The outlets are dotted in various corners of the roads. It's a modern way of making cash transactions, and it's proving a lucrative option for Nigeria's entrepreneurs.
Let's head to East Africa now, and Uganda is inching closer to begin work on its oil pipeline construction projects. The East African nation has validated an environmental impact assessment report. This clearance is for the Ugandan section of the East African crude oil pipeline. Business Africa has learned that construction on the $3.5 billion project is likely to begin in the first quarter of 2021.
Uganda has approved an environmental impact assessment for a planned oil pipeline, Bloomberg reports. This brings the East African nation closer to the start of its construction. The Ugandan National Environment Management Authority issued an approval certificate to Total East Africa Midstream BV for the project. The clearance is for the Ugandan section of the East Africa crude oil pipeline, just under 300 kilometers of the roughly 1,400 kilometer conduit, as per an agency-issued statement. Total SA is leading the development of the $3.5 billion pipeline from the western Uganda oil fields to Tanzania's Tanga port, in partnership with the two governments and China's CNOOC Limited. Construction is likely to begin in the first half of 2021. Uganda has an estimated 6 billion barrels of oil resources, with plans to start pumping crude in 2024.
And that's it for Business Africa. You can be a part of the program via our various social media handles. Follow me on Twitter at Ignatius Adam. Also, head over to Africanews.com for the entire program. And more, thank you for watching and goodbye.